Today on Stock Charts in Focus, we're showing you how to track entries, stops, price targets, all right on your charts. Now I'm reaching back into my bag of Stock Charts tricks, showing you some of the tools that I simply can't live, can't trade, can't invest without. We're going to put those key levels directly on your charts. Going to do it in SharpCharts, going to do it in ACP, going to take your trade tracking and your watch list to the next level. So lots to cover on the show today. Of course, you know what it is. It's all new. It's all here. It's Stock Charts in Focus. All right, my friends, welcome to the show, Stock Charts in Focus. Of course, our product focus show here on the channel where we dig into the site, dive into the tools, show you around the features, and ultimately help you get more value out of Stock Charts. That's our mission here every Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern time, up on the live channel, also up on our YouTube channel after that, and the on-demand platform at StockChartsTV.com. My name is Grayson Roze, Vice President of Operations here at StockCharts.com. Wonderful, as always, to be back with you. And once again, like I said, we're reaching into my bag of Stock Charts tips and tricks and ideas, things that I've been using for years, things that I use every day, every week, and we're showing you how to use some of those exact same tools. This in particular is going to be a really fun episode. Now, here's kind of the background. No matter who you are, no matter what you trade, no matter how much money you have, it does not matter. When it comes to actually executing a trade, actually placing an order, actually buying something, we are all the same. All of us, no matter what we buy, no matter who we are, we have an entry. We've got some levels in mind for our stops. We probably have some price targets. We should track some levels of gains there. And we're all going to need to think about those key levels for every trade, every investment that we make. Now, I've been using Stock Charts for a long time. I've been trading for a long time, investing for a long time as well. And this is something that I've kind of landed on over the years. Here's kind of the backstory for you on the show today. Over the years, I've tried pretty much everything to track my trades, track my entries, track my stops, track my ideal price targets, track different sort of gain levels on my charts. I've tried it with comments. I've tried it with spreadsheets. I've tried it with little notepads off on the side. And where I've landed is that there is nothing more powerful than tracking your trades, whether it's a watch list kind of setup idea or something you actually own in your portfolio. There is nothing more powerful than tracking those trades directly on your charts. There are some simple little tricks that I've landed on using horizontal lines that make it incredibly easy to track your trades directly on your charts. And that's what we're going to show you on today's episode. Very, very excited about it. So we're going to do this in SharpCharts first, then we'll jump over to ACP, show you how some of these tools work over there. There are similarities, but also some key differences between the two platforms. And one of the very cool things is that throughout the rest of this year, both platforms are going to continue to evolve, and they're actually going to kind of meet in the middle. So we'll talk about that later in the show. But if you've wanted to get a little bit better at tracking your trades, tracking your positions, tracking new things that you're following for a potential buy or a potential sell if you're going short, this episode is really going to help you out. So without further ado, let's jump over to the site and get it going. All right, everyone. So like I said, we're starting in the SharpCharts world here. We are on the SharpCharts workbench and we're looking at Chipotle because we're hungry for good trade ideas, right? We're looking at Chipotle, and this is actually kind of my default chart. And we've talked about my default chart a little bit on the show in the past. I use a kind of a leveling system to bring in additional indicators as I go using chart styles over here on the left. But this is actually the chart that I like to start with. It's pretty simple. It's got price relative up at the very top. Also got the full quote turned on here, so I get a little bit more price data, a little more info about this symbol. But the chart itself, a couple of moving averages. I've got the volume bars down here, and I've got a 200-day average on those volume bars. There's something hidden in this chart, though, that you don't actually see until I sort of start to add it in on the go. If I scroll down here to the settings, we can see in our overlays section, we've got our moving averages. I've got the 20, the 50, the 100, and the 200. I actually have the 20 turned off using opacity. So that one I can sort of toggle on and off when I want it for different types of trades. But the key, and the thing that we're going to talk about on the show today, is that as you can see right here, I've got 3 horizontal line overlays that have a blank parameters box on this chart. So every time I pull up a chart, I've got these 3 little boxes down here at the bottom that I can fill in whenever I want. Now, when they're blank, there's going to be nothing there. There's no horizontal line to draw if there's no value. But I've got these set up in specific ways with specific styles here and specific colors. So when I start to track a trade, all I have to do is jump down to the settings area, fill in these boxes with the key details of that trade, and then I can add those horizontal lines to that chart. So we're going to walk through this. It's going to make a little bit more sense as we actually kind of jump into an example. Now, before we do that, we're going to turn on one other key feature of the SharpCharts workbench. You can see that when I hover over this chart, there's really nothing. I do have my little cursor highlighter there with that green circle, but there's no kind of cross lines or anything like that on this chart. If we jump up here to the top and we look for this little checkbox called Inspect, when we turn that on, you'll see that now when I hover over that chart, I get a lot more information. I get those cross lines, I get that floating info box, and this tells me a ton. When I hover over specific candles, you can see it'll tell me key price data from that specific day. This is a daily chart, by the way, over the last 1.5 years. This will give me open, high, low, close, and volume on that chart. Also, over on the right side, it'll actually tell me exactly what that price level is. That is crucial. So over there on the y-axis, you can see that floating little kind of blue box that's changing as I move. That'll tell me what my Y position is, or most importantly, kind of translating that, what the price level that I'm hovering over is. So this inspector is a key tool that I like to leave on my charts, both in ACP and here in SharpCharts. The other thing that's built into the inspector that's very, very cool here in SharpCharts is a measurement tool. So this will come in handy in just a second. But if I hover over a specific area and I hold down the mouse and then I start to drag, you'll see that it disappears for just a second. But now this inspector is actually changed a little bit and I can drag in either direction, up or down, to use this as a measurement tool on the fly. This is very, very key. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. But you can see as I drag down here, it'll actually tell me how far down I've gone on an absolute basis, sort of based on the price of the chart, and then also on a percentage basis. So I can drag this down if I wanted to see, for instance, what approximately a 15% drawdown was going to be off this level. I can see that that's going to be down 266 points to about 1505 here on Chipotle. So the measurement function of the inspect tool is going to be crucial for us here. So let's imagine for a second together that we took a trade here on Chipotle, and we are going to use the benefit of hindsight for this example, and we're going to act like we totally nailed this this base breakout here on Chipotle. So if we hover over this chart, I picked this one because it is a real beauty of a chart setup and has actually popped above resistance and moved quite a bit higher. If we look at this though, it's a really interesting chart because we really did print some key resistance levels going across here. We can use this inspect tool to kind of see exactly what those are, but we can see that the sort of interim high here on the base breakout on the base that this put in was about, if we use our price labels, it's about 1776. But if we actually hover over this candle, we can see that in that info box we closed at about 1766.24. That was kind of the key price level that we had to get through here on Chipotle. So let's say we were looking at this chart a couple of weeks ago before it made the breakout. We identified this key level at 1766.24, and we said if it can get above that level, I'm going long on Chipotle. So what I would do if I was kind of watching this one set up, again, because I've got those hidden little inputs down there, those hidden horizontal lines on my chart, I would see this setup. I would say 1766.24. I'm going to keep that number in mind. And I'm going to now scroll down to the settings area of the workbench, and you can see that I've got a red, a green, and a blue. We'll talk through those as we go. Now, green to me is go, so I actually use this as a hidden feature of the workbench to allow me to input an entry point, an ideal entry point. So I'm going to come in here, I'm going to type in 1766.25, because let's say we want it to break above that 24 level. I'm going to type that into that box. That's going to be our price level. You can see that that's on the green line. And because, again, we're imagining that we're sort of going through this, this theoretical trade from a couple of weeks ago, because we haven't actually put that trade on, I would actually set this to be a dashed thick line, okay? So when we put that line on our charts, again, all I had to do, because those indicators are already down here on the workbench, all I had to do was scroll down, put that number right into the box and change a style input. And now when I hit update, I've got this green line going across our charts. So if you cover up the last kind of month or so, imagine that we were kind of back here at the start of April and we're watching Chipotle start to climb back up to the top of that base, top of that kind of resistance line. I would put this dashed horizontal line across my charts at that key level, again, 1766.25 here on Chipotle. And this is my little indicator to myself. So in my watch list, if I see something that has one of these dashed lines, that's gonna be sort of my key level in mind, saying if we can get above that level, this thing is a potential long candidate. So because it's dashed, I know that I haven't actually put the trade on. It's just kind of a key level to keep in mind. Now I might want to set an alert at this level. Might be something that I annotate as well. But having that dashed line across the charts is my indicator of an ideal entry point here on Chipotle. Now, once I actually make a trade, I'll go down to the settings area again, and what I'll do is update that level depending on what my actual entry point is. Let's say we actually do get that move through, that kind of follow through resistance here on Chipotle. We actually put in an order and we buy some shares of Chipotle. Once that's happened, I'm going to come down here, I'm going to update this number with my actual entry price, and then I'm going to change this line to be a solid thick line. You can see that little style input changes to be solid thick, and when I hit update, now we've got a solid thick line going across this chart instead of a dashed green line. So this is what I use to track my ideal entries and then my actual entries on my charts. I would actually go ahead and save this to my account, and when I'm following this chart now, I know exactly where I got into this position because I've got this solid green line going right across the charts. I can see exactly where I got into this chart. I don't have to keep a note off to the side. I don't have to keep a comment in a spreadsheet somewhere or something like that. I've got that entry price right on this chart with that solid green line. And this is incredibly easy to add because, again, I've come down here and I've actually set up this chart with these horizontal lines already kind of built into the settings, just with those blank parameters boxes. So let's keep it going from here. Again, I use those dashed green lines across my chart to mark my ideal entry point on any trade setups that I'm thinking about. Once I actually get into the trade, I change that dashed horizontal line to be a solid, thick green line to indicate my entry. Once I've put on a trade, now I need to start thinking about my stops. I need to start thinking about my ideal price targets, where I want this thing to go. What are going to be those key gain levels for me where I might want to start thinking about taking profits. I got to think about the rest of the trade. Well, that's where my other horizontal lines come in. So if we scroll back down here, we kind of glossed over the red and the blue earlier, but let's talk about those now. So again, I've got 3 horizontal lines in here, one set up with green, one set up with red, and one set up with blue. Again, to me, green is go, so that's why I use the green line for my entries. Red to me is stop, so I want to think about my stops on this chart. I'm going to fill in this box with my red line. I'm going to take whatever stop I'm going to enter on this trade, and I'm going to mark that on this chart with a horizontal line going across solid, thick red line. Now, when we start to actually come up with our stops, we can use many different tools to come up with our stops. You've probably got your tools yourself. For me, for the system that I trade, I'm typically shooting for about a 10% stop. That's kind of the rough level that I have in mind. Ideally, I want about a 2-to-1 risk reward. So I'm shooting for about a 20% gain, and I'm keeping a 10% stop loss in mind. I got to figure out what that 10% level is going to be though, don't I? So that's where this measurement tool comes in handy. Again, we've got that built into the inspector, so as long as we have those cross lines turned on, we can hover over this chart right around our entry point, and I can actually start to measure down to find what a 10% drawdown is going to be on this chart. So that's going to put us right around, what is that, 1591.71. So let's say we set our stop around a 10% loss, 1591.71. That's going to be the number that we keep in mind. All we have to do to mark that on this chart is scroll right back down to those settings, 1591.71. I think that was our level. We type that into that box, and again, we hit update. We've got our solid, thick red line indicating where our stop is going to be. Now, as I go in and I actually update those stops with my brokerage, obviously I got to keep these sort of together. So when I save these charts, I am going in and making sure that my entry price is correct, making sure that my stop is correct, and making sure that those numbers match up. A little bit of a manual process, but having that stop marked directly on my chart as that solid, thick red line going right across, think about what we have now. I've got my entry, I've got my stop. Those are clearly indicated on this chart. And I didn't have to draw them in as annotations or anything like that. I don't have to worry about them as just drawings that might sort of, get knocked off the chart at some point as time goes on. These are horizontal lines that are going to be marked across this entire chart. And even if I do things like change the duration of this chart, let's say I bump it out to be a 3-year view, I'm still going to have that entry and still going to have that stop on this 3-year chart. Even if I do something like change this to be a weekly chart, I'm still going to have those price levels. I've got my 3-year weekly now. I've still got those same price levels on this chart though. So I love having these horizontal lines to mark those because they're a little bit more sticky than the annotations. Another way to do this would be to draw some annotations across this chart. But personally, I love to have these indicators, these horizontal line indicators saved directly to the chart style. They're available for me right down here. All I have to do is jump down and fill in those boxes with those key levels that I want to keep in mind. So we've gone through our red, we've gone through our green. What about our blue? We're going to talk about that one in just a sec. One other thing actually that I did want to mention here on the SharpCharts workbench, one really cool trick. Some of you might be familiar with this. I personally use what I call a bracketed stop system. Not really me calling it, what we call a bracketed stop system. So I've actually got my 10% level here in mind, right? That's kind of what I want my my average stop to be. In my case, actually what I do is I take that position, I split it 50-50. I take 50% of the shares and I'll actually put in kind of a shorter stop on that. And then I'll take the other 50% of the shares and put in a sort of a deeper stop on that. They'll be bracketed around that 10% level. So generally, I'll put in about a 50% stop at an 8% loss and a 50% stop around a 12% loss, bracketing that 10%. The reason I'm bringing this up is because the SharpCharts workbench actually allows you to type multiple numbers into these boxes. So I can actually use one line here, one horizontal line indicator to mark both of my stops on my chart. If you have multiple stops set on your positions, you can do the same thing here on the SharpCharts workbench. So let's actually go back up to this chart and let's assume that we use that bracketed stop system. I can hover over here and I can draw this down to be about an 8% loss. We can see that that's going to be 1624.65. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to type in 1624.65 and I'm going to update that chart. Now I can come back up, I can draw down to my 12% loss, which is going to be about, what is that? 1555.90, nice easy number to remember, 155.90. I can come down to this area and actually separate those two numbers with a little comma. So 1555.90. Hit enter. You can see that I now have both of those stops marked on this chart, but actually just in one line. A helpful little trick, if you're using multiple stops on a position, you can actually put those into one box here on the SharpCharts workbench. And again, if we draw this down, we can see that our 10% level is going to be basically right in the middle of those. So kind of a bracketed system. Popular kind of trading tool there. Instead of having everything at just one stop, you kind of break it up into two, a short stop and a long stop. So Anyways, another little piece of my system. So our third input here is going to be that horizontal line with the blue color. Now this is the one that I have as a dashed line, and I like to use blue as my indicator for my price targets. I actually use this one in a couple of different ways. I will use it to mark price targets. I'll also use it to mark break-even points if I'm stopped out of 50% of a position. Now that gets a little bit technical, but let's say Chipotle came down, triggered my 8% stop, and then bounced from there. So I'm out 50% of the position, but I still have that other 50% of the shares on. I kind of want to know when I'm going to break even on that trade overall. So I'll actually use that blue line to mark my break even point on the 50% of the shares that I still have. I will also use it on new trades that are still fully on. I'll also use it to mark price targets. So like I said earlier, my ideal price target is about a 20% level. That's kind of when I start to think about taking profits if something does get up to that level. Again, I'm looking for 2-to-1 risk reward, and I've got typically a 10% stop. So a 20% gain is kind of my ideal. So again, we can measure that in the other direction. We can measure this up. In this case, gets right up to the top of our workbench here. We can see that it's about 21.2269. So we can use that as our number, 21.2269. Type that into the box. A little tricky to see because it is right up there at the top of Chipotle. But as this chart evolves over time, we've got a 20% gain level marked on this chart as that blue dashed line. Now, again, you can use that sort of third one in any way that you want. It could be an indication of kind of where you want to take another entry. Could be an indication of your price targets. Could be something like the break even, like we were just talking about. You've kind of got this third line that you can use. But again, that's that concept of having your entry marked clearly on the chart, having your stops marked clearly on the chart, and having ideally your price targets marked right there on the chart as that blue line. I find that this is incredibly clear. Just so we can see it a little bit more, let's imagine, well, let's just say our price target's going to be about 15%. Let's draw that up. We'll do 20, 30, 55 so we can see this line a little bit more clearly. 20, 30, 55. So let's say that was our price target. We can see that Chipotle actually, interestingly, has come right up to that level. If we wanted to take profits around that 15% level, well, there's a clear indication of when we're going to hit it. So having these levels marked right there on the chart makes it incredibly easy to track either new trade setups like we were doing with that dashed line on the entry, or once you've actually taken a position and this is something you own in your own portfolio, makes it incredibly easy to see those details of that position that you have, your entry, your stops, your ideal price target. It's all marked right here for you. Again, the key for me is that I've added these indicators to this chart style, and I've saved this chart style with those empty boxes. So I don't have to go adding these horizontal lines when I need them. I don't have to worry about doing that. These inputs are just right there for me, right on the SharpCharts workbench. Makes it incredibly easy to work with. So hopefully that has given you a sense of how you can track your trades right here on SharpCharts. Now in our last few minutes, we're going to jump over to ACP. We're not going to run through everything again. We've kind of covered the structural, the foundation, the ideas kind of behind this concept of tracking your trades right on your chart. But I do want to show you how things work over in ACP. So let's jump over there now. All right, everyone, so here we are in ACP, of course, our advanced charting platform, the complement to SharpCharts. You got two different ways to chart the markets now in StockCharts, either that classic kind of static chart view that we were just looking at with SharpCharts, or if you like that dynamic, fluid experience that ACP brings, this is here for you as well. Now we're looking at my default chart in ACP. We're going to get back to a 1.5 year chart. And again, we're looking at CMG Chipotle because we're hungry for good trade ideas. So we're going to do the exact same thing here. We're going to set up those horizontal lines, but things do work just a little bit differently in ACP. Now, in this case, I haven't actually saved those horizontal lines to this chart because it's so easy to add these in a different way here in ACP. What I have done though is I have favorited that horizontal line indicator. So if you're a StockCharts member, you can come over here to the chart settings area, top icon on the left, And you can scroll down into the standard indicators area and favorite any of your favorite indicators. When you do favorite something, it's going to show up as a start indicator right at the top of the list. So you can see in here, one of my favorite indicators is horizontal line. These are alphabetical, so it shows up pretty high in the list. So I've got a horizontal line indicator right here that I can easily access. When I give that a click, you can see that I've got the settings for that horizontal line. And once again, we've got our horizontal line value input right here. We can do our style settings. We can make this a solid, thick, let's say green line. And we actually get to choose whether we want to see the legend or hide the legend on this chart. So if we hide or if we unhide that legend, you can see that that's now going to show up here, and it's actually going to have the color in there as well. So a nice helpful little indicator of which value goes with which line. If you don't want that on the chart though, you can actually hide that legend here in ACP. Now, I haven't talked about the most important thing, which is actually putting a value into this box. Of course, we can click into here and we can type a value into this box. But in ACP, being a little bit more dynamic, a little bit more fluid, we can actually interactively click on this chart to set that level. So we can highlight exactly where we want to go. We turn on those crosshairs up here in the top, and we can actually just hover over this chart and click exactly where we want to set that line. So as you can see, I've set this up with our solid thick line, green, and I've clicked right on the chart at our entry price. Now we can come in here and modify this. Let's say we actually wanted it to be 78 or something like that. All we have to do is type in that box and hit enter. But adding those horizontal lines here in ACP, very, very easy. We can close this down, and now we see that horizontal line right on this chart. So we could do the same thing for our stops. Let's say we wanted to have our red stop, and we want that to be a solid thick line. That was somewhere down here. We click in here, we add our horizontal lines. We can actually move those around on the fly. We click in to add one, we click in to add the next one, and we can do the same thing here with our blue line. We can change this to be a blue line. We can set that style to be dashed thick, and we can actually click exactly where we want to have that blue line. Let's say it was a little bit lower. There we go. We've got our blue price target line added right to this chart. So same concept. We can do the exact same thing that we just did in SharpCharts right here in ACP, just a little bit more dynamic, a little bit more fluid. I love being able to click right on the chart to set exactly where you want that level to be. This is actually pulled from another feature in ACP that's very, very cool. You can click down into this alerts sidebar and actually click anywhere that you want to set an alert. So let's say you add that price target line. You can actually hover over this chart, click that level, and you see that gets entered right into this box. You can then choose your trigger, choose your notification type, and add that to your account. So if you set one of these price target lines here in ACP, you can also create an alert for that level. And as soon as it gets triggered, we'll send you a text, we'll send you an email, we'll show you a banner on the site. It makes it really easy to follow those key levels. So another feature that I like to use. I also like to use that one on the entry as well. So when I have one of those dashed entry lines before a trade gets there, if I want to watch a key level, back when this Chipotle entry price was a dashed line at the beginning of our exercise here, you can also set alerts for those levels too. It's a great way to be reminded of a strong setup that you've been following. You don't actually have to be watching the markets. You can let StockCharts do the work for you, trigger those alerts when those key levels are crossed. So that is our show for today. Hopefully you had fun with me digging into some of these tools. Again, things that I use every day, every week in my own trading system. This has been a total game changer. Seeing your trades, seeing your positions right there on the chart, all the details, your entry, your stops, your price targets, seeing it all right there on your charts is a total game changer. Instead of having lists off in a spreadsheet or on a piece of paper, instead of having to log into your brokerage, track through all of their stuff to figure out what those levels are, you mark them right on your charts. All you have to do is pull up those charts for the things that you own, and you see those trades right there. It is a thing of beauty. So hopefully this has given you some ideas in SharpCharts and in ACP for different tools that you want to use and bring into your own process as well. Remember, we do this show every Friday, digging into tools, digging into features, having fun, getting more value out of StockCharts. That is our mission here every Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, up on the live channel, also up on our YouTube channel and the on-demand platform as well. So lots of ways to watch, but we're always having fun here, digging into StockCharts, getting more value out of the site. Again, my name is Grayson Roze, Vice President of Operations here at StockCharts.com. It's been great to be with you. I'll see you for another one very soon. But until then, chart on, my friends.